Hello. Let's do a tag. I haven't done a tag in a while, and I think this one will be kind of fun. So, tag time. Cheers. Kieran, the reader, did this tag recently, and I believe Steve Donahue also did it recently. It's been making the rounds, and when I saw it, I was like, this is a tag for Alyssa. I don't do a ton of tags over here, but sometimes a tag is too good to pass up. And since I have I'm dressed in regular people clothes, not my normal like troll like I stay home and read all day clothes, so I figured this would be a good time to film some things. And my internet's out, so what else do I have to do other than just make content to edit and put up later? So this is the New York book tag. It's not just about books. If you have been here for a while, you know my fondness for my home state, for the city that has my heart, for the place where I grew up. You know my love of New York and all things New York. So this was right up my alley, and we're gonna jump into it. I'm gonna put a link to the person who made this original tag down below. I cannot remember his name. I believe it's Jim. Editing Alyssa will put his channel name up here as well. I really like this tag. I think that it's fun. It's fun. It's different. It's not just the same sort of like straight bookish stuff all the time. Number one is, what is your favorite book set in or around New York? I have two favorites that kind of come to mind that I feel like I haven't seen talked about as much on here as options. Why did I not pull these books? I'm not prepared. It's also super windy today, and the dogs are downstairs alone, so you may hear some whining and crying, and you may hear the wind. The wind is why I have no internet. So anyway, so two books that remind me of New York. Amor Towles Rules of Civility. This is his freshman novel. Absolutely love this. This made me obsessed with this man as a writer. This made me nostalgic for a New York that I've never lived in. There's something, the reason I love New York City so much is that if you've grown up in it, around it, had any sort of connection to New York City throughout, you will realize like how much it grows and it changes, and it's this living, breathing beast of a city that is constantly evolving, and I love it. I love that part of it. There's so much that I don't like about it too, which is why I don't live in Manhattan anymore. But there is this soft spot for anybody who's ever lived there. It's a special place, and this just made me think about and long for a version of that city that I love that I will never see and that will never exist again. This is a 1937 set in Manhattan. It's a wonderful story. You get like New York high society, you get to see the Depression. It's just, oh, it's so good. And I love his writing so much, so much. So yes. And then the other, I think should be obvious book is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I know a lot of people are throwing around things like The Great Gatsby, which is great, but this book is an ode to New York City. This is such a, like, if you've ever lived in New York for any extended period of time, if you have friends and family that grew up there, if you have connections to the city, you will understand the immense love that N.K. Jemisin pours out for this city in this book. It is so good. This is a fantasy. Not everybody likes this one, I will say, but I love it. This is a fantasy series, an urban fantasy where the boroughs of New York kind of come alive in other people, and there's this other entity that is coming and is waking up the boroughs, and there's a kind of great fight. So like each borough has a like a fantasy spirit person. I don't know how better to say this. And then the city of New York itself as an entity has its own um, like personification. And it's so good. The people that she chooses to represent each borough are so perfectly chosen. The way that she literally, as I said, she just pours out her love for this city in this novel, and I love it so much. And I do need to get to book two. I need to do a reread of this first so I can get to the second book so I can find out what happens, because we, of course, it's a fantasy series. It ends on cliffhanger. I need to know what happens next. But those are my two picks, and I'd love to know yours down below too, because I'm always here for like more books about New York. If you tell me a book is set in New York, I'm already like three-quarters of the way to wanting to read it. Number 2, New York is famous for its skyscrapers. What is the highest building you've been up in? I don't know how tall everything is, but I know I've been to the top of the Empire State Building. I'm pretty sure I've been fairly high up in the Chrysler building for meetings. I don't know if I've ever gone up to the top. And then my junior prom was at the top of the World Trade Center. There was one of the towers. I can't remember which tower. Um, Editing Alyssa will tell me why I'm stupid and put it in here. But there was Windows on the World, which was this beautiful restaurant that was at the very top, and you got these beautiful views across the city, and it was gorgeous. And that's where my junior prom was, and it no longer exists. Number 3, New York, New York. So good they named it twice. What is the last book you reread? The last book I reread this year is Ninth House. I don't reread a ton of books, but I do reread books, if that makes sense. I have a few books that are kind of in constant reread rotation, and that's Rebecca, Mrs. Dalloway, and Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion. Those kind of get reread on an almost annual, biannual kind of thing. I do read those quite often. But yeah, the last one I reread this year so far is Ninth House. Number 4, American Psycho was a disturbing novel set in New York. What is the most disturbing book you have read? There is a review for this, and I'm picking Dead Inside because I'll put a picture up of it. Beautiful cover. It's too much. It does it's I can't even fully talk about it on here because I will get like the YouTube gods will be so mad at me, but it's it's just so wrong. And like I can withstand a lot of gross, a lot of like body horror, a lot of violence, a lot of things, but this was just gratuitously ugh, no, wrong. Didn't even have a point. I feel like at least American Psycho has like a point and a critique and all this other stuff. This was just ugh. Feel like watching that review. Feel free. I'll try to remember to tag it up here. But number 5 is where were you when you heard the news about 9/11? So 9/11 was my freshman year of college. I did not have class that day. I did not have classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I had a room to myself in college because my roommate was supposed to come from Turkey and she decided that she was not going to come to our college. And so I lucked out and had no roommate and they never reassigned me to anybody. And I didn't have a TV at the time. So I woke up to someone on my hall screaming, "What's the significance of this plane crash in Pennsylvania?" And I went, "What?" And I stumbled into someone's room half asleep because nobody on my hall had class that day because freshman year you kind of all have the same schedule, at least that's how it worked in my school. And I opened the door and saw just flaming towers, and then the whole day just unfolded from there. So I was out in Pennsylvania. I was desperately trying to reach anybody back home because I didn't know where everybody was at that time. The phone lines got really jammed up, so you couldn't even get anybody. The campus was basically shut down, and if you went anywhere, it was really eerie because everybody was sitting in front of a TV just watching as the news unfolded. And sometimes people would come in, especially on the days after, you had kids get pulled out from class to receive news about, missing family members and things like that. And so it was really hard, and it was very interesting to exchange stories with peers that were in the city at the time because you realized how stressed everybody was, but for different reasons. We had no immediate danger fear, but we had all this uh, fear of unknown stuff because we couldn't reach anybody. Eventually, one of my classmates who lived, in town, sort of not far from school, brought me to her parents' house and just sat me down there and tried to like calm me down because I couldn't get anybody for a really long time. And I tried to get my dad on the phone first because I knew he worked in Midtown and was fine. And I knew he'd give me the most calm description of what was happening. And my brother did not work that far downtown, but he worked closer. And then my mom was kind of all over. And I know she worked the furthest downtown, but I never knew where she would be for meetings and whatnot throughout the day. And she actually wasn't quite She wasn't very far from the towers that day. She did watch the second plane come in because they did have morning meetings that they were going to, and she kind of got wrapped up in the rush of people running away from everything. So it was stressful trying to get family. Not, it wasn't even just family members. It was trying to find your friends for their parents. You knew people whose parents worked in the World Trade Center, and you're like frantically trying to get somebody to be like, "Is your dad okay? Is your mom okay?" Um, it was a crazy day, and I don't think that anybody who was alive, especially at a formative age, will ever forget it. Kind of like a JFK. I will say that like I am blessed that I didn't lose anybody super close to me during this event. Everybody was safe. Um, but yeah, it's it's left its mark in many of us, and I don't think it's possible to forget those things. Um, and it's still really hard for me to read 9/11 centered stories because I was in a relationship for a very long time with somebody who was across the street and watched it all unfold and was evacuated. And I dealt with their PTSD every year around 9/11. And though it's not my PTSD, there is like a sensitivity that I have acquired, an extra sensitivity to the material. But yeah, anyway, sort of depressing, but that's where we were. That's where I was. Number 6, my favorite movies or movie set in New York. The cliche answer, despite the fact that it's absolutely problematic, Breakfast at Tiffany's, because I mean, I'm a girl, I'm a basic bitch. I love Audrey Hepburn. I love cat. I just, I used to walk by Tiffany's to get on the bus to go home every day, and I have definitely stood in front of a Tiffany's window with a croissant early in the morning looking at stuff. I've done it. I've done it. I've done it. I'm basic. I can't. Anyway. And the other one is Cruel Intentions because you cannot tell me if you grew up in a time where you watched Cruel Intentions in a theater and then watched it multiple times after on like VHS tape that you did not every time Bittersweet Symphony came on immediately think of driving in a Jaguar Roadster across a bridge. It is such a freaking good movie. Cruel Intentions is so freaking good. It is so good. I love that. I love it. Dangerous Liaisons is good too. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. But that's not set in New York. Anyway, number 7. Have you been to New York? When was the last time you visited? Well, yes, I've been to New York many times. So I grew up in the suburbs, and we did go to the city like all the freaking time. My parents worked in the city. I worked in the city for a long time. I lived in the city for years. So the city has always been a frequent member of my life. And I think the least time I've spent in New York City has been in the last like 3 or 4 years, basically since the personal pan pizza, not just because of the personal pan pizza, but for things with like my own career and moving out. And as I don't have as ready access to a train line as I used to, I've moved to a different area. I used to be able to just walk down the street, hop on a train, and go to Manhattan when I wanted to. So I don't think that we've been for like no, I think it was pre-pandemic. We haven't been in a few years, but I'm hoping it to for I have like a little thing I want to do with Jesus for his birthday coming up. So hopefully we can correct that soon. 8. Who is your favorite painter from New York, or what is your favorite painting of New York? I have artwork that I enjoy, but I'm not like a big art person. But the first name that popped into my head is Edward Hopper. Where I grew up, he did live there for a while. There is a Hopper House, and so it's a name that I'm very familiar with. It's art that I'm very familiar with. And some of his works are very just quintessential sort of New York. Like when you think about New York, this is kind of some of the images that come up in your mind. So yeah, I guess Hopper's my go-to answer on this one. Number 9 is your favorite song about New York. Now, I don't have anything specific that is a New York song, but essentially, like almost anything that Billy Joel has ever put out makes me think of New York. It is New York to me. Billy Joel is my musical embodiment of New York. Probably like generations before me had Frank Sinatra, I have Billy Joel. The 10th question is not a question, it's to tag people. I have no idea who to tag. I never know who to tag. So basically, if you would like to do this tag, do the tag. It's fun. I like it. If New York has any meaning to you, I'd love to hear your answers to these questions. I think it's fun. I like having a book tag that's centered in place and not just on books themselves. I think it's an interesting way to look at media, basically. And it gives you a little bit more insight into each creator that does the tag. So I liked this. I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to know any of your answers. If you don't want to do the tag, you just want to answer a few of them, answer them. Yeah, that's it. That's all that's going on. See you guys in the next video. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think